All right, folks, we are being recorded and are streaming live on YouTube. I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America, and to the
republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
We're much better live today, much more coordinated. So we are operating under Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, which allows us to conduct public hearings and meetings virtually so long as they are recorded for posterity and are streamed live on YouTube. And so tonight for our public hearing, this is our second public hearing of the day, having done a live one at City Hall at 1 o'clock. I'd like to just share with you guys the rules that the commission adopted. These were publicly posted as well. So each member of the public can sign up by emailing the charter clerk. You've all done that. We have 5 people signed up to speak tonight. Each member of the public can address the commission for a total of 5 minutes. People will be called in the order that they signed up. The clerk will time, Sophia, our clerk, will time each person's remarks and give 1-minute warning before their time is up. Members of the public who are not speaking, and in fact, I'd ask this of everybody, including commission members, please put yourself on mute, only because we're going to get background noise and we want each speaker to be able to be clearly heard. So if everyone can mute yourself if you're not talking, that'd be great. Number 3, members of the public may also submit written statements of any length to the clerk. These shall become part of the record of the meeting, but won't be read out loud unless the person is present, in which case they can speak for 5 minutes as per above. 4, commissioners may ask questions of the public if they so choose at the conclusion of any individual's remarks. Length of time of questioning and answers is in the chairman's discretion. And finally, all comments should be civil and pertain to changes to the charter. No personal or ad hominem attacks will be allowed. And I'll rule out of order any comments not related. So with that, if everybody's on mute. All right, we will get started. So first up tonight, and I don't think she is on yet, wait, first let me stop sharing my screen. Yep, good. First person up tonight, and I don't think she's on yet, is Kathy Schultz here. If not, is Whitney Fenton here? Okay, and the third person to sign up was Matt McGee. Matt, would you like to address the commission?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. All right. My comments tonight will be very blunt and brief. The charter revision, as currently written, weakens minority representation and community oversight against those in power across the board. This is a dangerous, slippery slope for 2 reasons. 1, Shelton is not a stranger to its fair share of controversies and scandals, the 2 of which come to mind being the corruption scandal of '09, which sent 2 of our developers and a building official to jail, and the embezzlement scandal of 2014, which sent a City Hall employee to jail. Now this commission is looking to give more power to fewer people with less oversight overall. This is a major mistake. 2, you all sitting on this commission may be very happy with the people who are currently in power. You're not alone. Some were elected fair and square, others appointed. However, I challenge you all on this commission to think about someone who does not represent your values, someone who you often disagree with. Now think about that person being in a position of power within this city. That person who you often disagree with will now have all the powers vested in them by this charter. There will be little oversight, if any. Checks and balances may be considered unnecessary to you all now, but one day you may feel very differently. For this reason, I caution you regarding the changes you are currently proposing to make. You all on this commission claim to be supporting and encouraging more voter choice. You know what also encourages more voter choice? Term limits on all elected offices. Term limits inject fresh faces onto voters' ballots and new ideas into City Hall. However, despite all of your advocacy for voter choice, none of you seem to have given any light of day to this idea. I wonder why. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to start the questioning because some of what you said is just factually incorrect. And I don't know if you've watched what we've done. Do you know that we actually did consider term limits for the mayor and for other officials in Shelton? Were you aware of that?
Great, and none of them got into the final revision.
That's correct. We actually did an extensive analysis of other towns, and there is no other town in Fairfield County or the Valley that actually puts term limits on their executives. So, one of the things that we've done here is we've actually looked at other towns to try to take best.
There's also no other town without a finance board, but you decided to get rid of ours. So
that's actually factually incorrect again. And
really?
Have you actually looked at the work that we've done? I'm just curious. Have you looked at it?
Read the revisions last night and they were not very pleasant.
Got it. So you actually haven't seen the work we've done, and I'm more than glad to share it with you. It's publicly on the website right now. I have your email. I'll email it to you. Actually, about a third of the towns have no finance board. Bridgeport, Danbury, I can continue to give examples. The towns that do.
How about a tax board?
Well, excuse me?
How about a tax board? Finance tax board, same thing, basically.
Yeah, it is, but they don't have them. So look, this commission has done its work. We've done our research on this. And so
well, I know every town I looked up on their city website, they had some sort of board of apportionment of taxation, some sort of finance board, some sort of something. You can look at Trumbull, you can look at Derby, you can look at Ansonia, you can look at any town that is around Shelton. They had something, and you decided to just get rid of ours. So okay.
Doesn't like seriously, Matt. I'm okay with you disagreeing with us. I'm not okay with you not having your facts straight. So let me ask you another question, right? Whitney Fenton enjoyed. Oh, great. So we'll have you go next, Whitney. So Matt, the other question I have for you is, were you aware of the greater checks and balances that we've put in here? The mayor right now can arbitrarily, without any checks and balances, make appointments to a number of commissions like inland wetlands. We now require all appointments that the mayor can make to be approved by the Board of Aldermen.
Great. The Board of Aldermen is controlled by one party, and the mayor controls all those appointments, or excuse me, all of those nominations onto those. Do you not live in a
democracy? Do you not believe that the Democratic Party will eventually win? The Democrats have as much opportunity.
That's not the point.
But it is. We live in a democracy, Matt. We actually want democratically elected officials to be the ones making decisions, not ones appointed by the Republican Town Committee or the Democratic Town Committee. We want voters to choose, not 24 people sitting in the community center. Do you agree with that or no?
I'm sorry, I lost you there. My internet went out. What did you say?
Quite all right. I was simply saying is, do you believe that the voters should be deciding these things, or 24 people on a Democratic or Republican town committee, of which I'm a member, sitting in the community center? Who should be making the choices?
You know that's a false choice.
No, it's not. We made the change. We are changing it so that boards like A&T, which are not democratically elected, we are taking what little power remains there and transferring it to a board that is democratically elected, where we're putting in more checks and balances. So from a theory perspective, a democratic theory perspective, if you disagree with that and you say, no, democratically elected officials shouldn't be making the decision, I'm very comfortable with having that debate. But that's the argument you're essentially making, if I understand it.
The reality is, in Shelton, the mayor controls who gets on the RTC's nomination list. Am I wrong on that? Because I don't think I am. And I think any of you who participated in the process know that. And all of the RTC members who were just kicked off the RTC for challenging the person in power, I think they would agree with.
So Matt, we're going off course here because A, you're wrong. You're not a member of the RTC. You're a member of the DTC. And this is not talking about the charter anymore. So I'm going to end my line of questioning there. I think I've made the point. Other commissioners, would you care to ask questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to move on now to Whitney Fenton, who has joined. Whitney, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here. And thank you all for your service. And I also really appreciate Matt's passion for the city. It's cool to see. And I just have one thing. I don't know that much about Shelton politics, so I'm really here mostly to learn. But the one thing that I did read about that concerned me in the news article that was explaining what's going on here tonight was just that the mayor would choose the wetlands, the person who would kind of steer the city on wetlands, and that made me nervous because I did see that we had a commission, and I think that's so great. I don't know that Mayor Loretti. I don't really know that he. You know, if that's his like specialty, and I'd love to see the person who is chosen for that position to remain. You know, I mean, I feel like the committee is made up of people who have maybe, I don't know, just good experience with that. And I think that our wetlands are so such a gem. And I just would hope that they remain respected. And I'll just pause there.
Great, Whitney. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming out tonight. Commission, questions for Whitney on that? Gary,
maybe to him.
Yeah, Gary, you got to come off mute. There you go.
It's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Okay. Just wanted to ask a question.
Dave.
What is the concern, Whitney, that you have about the current situation? I don't really understand.
Oh, well, my understanding was that the wetlands advisor is like currently chosen by the committee of the town, and to transfer that to the mayor. I just feel like the mayor has so many other, you know, responsibilities. I'd love to see that person chosen by the committee that obviously is so passionate about the wetlands. But maybe you're shaking your head. Maybe I'm all wrong, and I'm sorry if
I'm just understanding, yeah.
okay.
Hi, Whitney. This is Gary DeFilippo speaking. We did make a change to that.
Okay.
The present charter allows the mayor to pick who he wants on the Wetlands Commission. The new charter, which is the one that's being proposed, has a checks and balance, and all the mayor's appointments need to get approved by the Board of Aldermen, which is our kind of our legislature. So there's a checks and balance. That's how it is now. Right now, the mayor picks certain commissioners, the different committees or commissions, and whoever he picks serves for 4 or 5 years, whatever the term is. And we've made that change to allow the mayor to make the appointments and the legislature, which is our Board of Aldermen, to confirm them.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I clearly have more reading to do. And thank you for your time. I'm sorry if I've wasted it.
No, you have not, Whitney. This is part of the process. So thank you. We appreciate you coming here tonight.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks, Whitney. We'll check again. Did Kathy Schultz come on? Okay, Kathy's not here. So next up then is Michelle Laubin. Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Michelle Laubin, I'm a Ward 4 resident. I'm also a current member of the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. And just to make it clear, these are my comments, not those of the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. I'm going to start by saying, and I will provide a copy of my statement for you, that there are a couple of items in the proposal that I think make some sense. I'd like to start with a positive. One is reducing the term of office for members of the library board from 6 years to 4 years probably makes some sense. We were joking around that the length of the term of the library board probably shouldn't be the same as the length of a term in the US Senate. So that probably makes some sense. The other thing that I think makes some sense is that allowing voting by remote means rather than requiring physical presence makes some sense. It's been used successfully by most boards in the city already, and especially during the pandemic. So I think that should probably be incorporated into our charter. Aside from those items, I find the majority of your proposal to be an abomination that is transparently designed to cater to the wishes of the current occupant of the mayor's office. Those who follow you in your roles as members of the Charter Revision Commission will wonder why you added a preamble to the charter that claims to value choice while transparently only making it possible for the citizens of the city of Shelton to have fewer choices and to remove the very checks and balances that are required for government to function well and in the interests of the people that we serve. I find it astonishing that you could have witnessed the actions of the administration this year in refusing to hold joint budget hearings as required by the current charter, willfully misinterpreting the governor's executive orders on modification of the budget process during the pandemic, ignoring the will of the citizens who asked and indeed petitioned for hearings, and adopting the mayor's budget proposal without asking a single question or having a single discussion in public with a single city department. And your response is effectively, let's do that again next year. Let's do that again for the next 10 years. That's exactly what the citizens of Shelton will get if they vote to adopt your charter revision proposal, which proposes to remove the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. When I met with you in January and I spoke at the first public hearing, I presented you with multiple examples of other towns and cities in Connecticut that not only have a Board of Apportionment and Taxation, but have a true Board of Finance that has much more robust authority to govern the financial aspects of the municipality, separate and apart from the legislative functions of the town council or the Board of Aldermen. I spoke to you about the importance of checks and balances and making sure that the citizens have a voice and an impact on the contours of the city budget through this process. In response to these examples of good government, you went in exactly the opposite direction. You proposed to eliminate the Board of Apportionment and Taxation, leaving only the Board of Aldermen to conduct all business for the city, together with the mayor, which effectively means that the mayor will have no checks and balances at all. No one will ask any questions because that's how business is conducted before the Board of Aldermen. I have to ask, why is the administration so afraid to answer reasonable and thoughtful questions on the budget? Why do they not want to have a public hearing process like every other municipality in the state, where citizens can actually learn where their tax dollars are going and why? Why are you seeking to do away with the only currently bipartisan board in the city government that actually seeks to fulfill this role on behalf of the citizens of Shelton? When a government is seeking to avoid the light of day, seeking to avoid public discussion, seeking to avoid answering questions, it is effectively seeking to become more authoritarian and less democratic. Is this what we want for Shelton? Is this what the charter revision seeks to accomplish with this proposal? Further reduction in choices presented to voters can be found in your proposal, section 2.4.2, that a political party can only nominate up to the number of seats that they can hold on an elected board or commission. Practically speaking, this means that, for example, rather than the Democrats nominating 9 people for the Board of Education and the Republicans nominating 9 people and the voters having a choice of 18 people to vote for, the number that each party can nominate for the Board of Ed would be 5 people each, for a total of 10 people from which to choose a board of 9. No one seems to have given any thought to what happens when members of other political parties or unaffiliated candidates get onto the ballot. How many unaffiliated candidates can petition their way onto the ballot under this system? You're also proposing to remove all pretense of involvement by the Board of Aldermen in the nominating of appointees to appointed commissions, which has already been covered by someone else's comments, so I'll skip that part. You've made an error, which I'll just point out briefly. Several times in your draft, you use the term Connecticut state statutes. We in Connecticut call them the Connecticut General Statutes. So at least if you're going to make that reference, I'd ask that you correct the terminology. Yet another attempt to reduce checks and balances and independent thought comes in section 5.1 concerning minority representation. Your proposal essentially allows for every single board in the city to be controlled by a 2/3 majority of the majority party, which just so happens to be the Republican Party. This supermajority status will enable every debate to be controlled by the Republican majority, with no ability of the minority party to even insist on a debate in public regarding the agenda of the majority party. And as has already been pointed out, we've seen it time and time again that the Republican Town Committee repeatedly expels those members from its ranks who show even the slightest tendency towards independent thought or disagreement with the current occupant of the mayor's office. So after this proposal is adopted, what the citizens of Shelton will see is that only Republicans who agree with the mayor will be allowed to stay in the RTC and be nominated for public office. Only they will appear on the ballot, and now only they will have a supermajority and therefore control over every board and every commission in the city. All pretense of nonpartisanship or bipartisan cooperation will be dispelled by this charter revision. This is not an increase in choice. It is a naked consolidation of power, a move in the direction of authoritarianism and away from democracy. One might ask, with this proposal, why bother to have any boards and commissions at all? We apparently no longer value public servants here in Shelton. You had an opportunity to make meaningful changes to the charter that would make Shelton government better and stronger and more of a marketplace of ideas. You have squandered that opportunity.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So let me lead off the questioning by first off saying just thank you on the general versus state statute. We actually do have Corporation Counsel reviewing this right now for just those type of word changes to make sure that we are being accurate on that. So thank you for that. We've caught several others in the draft that we sent out, which is part of the reason for this process. So we thank you for that. My first question to you is just a very theoretical one, because we've been debating different concepts. What does the word democracy mean to you? What is a democracy?
I'm not sure that we have time to have this debate tonight, but I think a fundamental principle of a democracy is participation by the citizenry, that we nominate folks for office, that we have a marketplace of ideas, that there is a public exchange of ideas, that we have public servants who are representing the interests of the citizens of the city of Shelton and are serving the interests of those citizens. We have a representative democracy, right? So we elect folks who will represent the interests of the public to serve on boards and ask questions on their behalf. And my concern is that that is not happening now. Even with the Board of Apportionment and Taxation, there is very little of that happening. If you go to the Board of Alderman meetings, what you see is not democracy. What you see is there are scripts and they are predetermined, and somebody makes a motion and they second the motion and they pass the motion, and there is zero discussion because they all know what the outcome is going to be ahead of time. That's
Michelle,
not democracy.
Well, let me pause you there, because I think this is where the disagreement is going to stem from. Is you have a very odd view of democracy. In a democracy, you have an election, and the person with the most votes wins into an office that has limited power with checks and balances. We don't live in a society, unless you think, and this is behind my question, like, should the United States Senate be just mandated 50-50? And nobody will really get a choice. The political parties will nominate those 50 people because that's bipartisanship and that's maximizing participation. Is that, I mean, if you had to write the US Constitution, would you write it that way?
I'm sure you know that that's not what I'm saying.
It is what you're saying. The Board of
No, it is not.
So let me ask you this.
Don't put words in my mouth, Dan. That's not what I'm saying.
Then let me ask you an A&T question. Who has lost in a competitive election on the Board of A&T in the last 20 years?
We can make the Board of A&T into something else if you like. We don't have to have a board that is 3-3 mandated, right?
Yeah,
but to eliminate the board completely, that's the direction that you've decided to go in. That is, in my view, a big mistake.
And yeah, you've absolutely said that. The history of the Board of A&T, so I'm a former chair of the Board of A&T myself, is, back in 1967, it was the fiscal authority of the city, right? It actually was a true board of finance. Over time, subsequent charter revisions have taken away more and more power from the Board of A&T, such that now really the only power it has is transferring, I'm telling you everything, the line items between a budget. It actually is at a point where in our deliberations, we consider going to a Board of Finance. It is not necessary in our opinion. We actually believe that the democratically elected Board of Aldermen, where Democrats will win someday, right? Like, Republicans are not automatically guaranteed to win here in Shelton. We have an election every 2 years. We ruled out a 4-year term for the mayor because we want the mayor, whoever he or she is, to be accountable to the people. So my question to you then is, if democracy is the people deciding, not the political parties, how does A&T actually serve a function of being democratic?
It's in what I've just described, which is the accountability of the city government. Right now, the only way that any questions at all are being asked is through the budget hearing process, which didn't happen this year. And I think we're all the worse for it. And apparently, it was never considered before that we eliminate the Board of Apportionment and Taxation until all of a sudden, last year, we actually passed a budget that was different from what the mayor wanted. And all of a sudden we're hitting the panic button. Oh my goodness, we can't have that. You were on the board of A&T when it meant something, when it was a board of finance. So I would think of all the members of this commission who would understand the value of having a board of finance that means something, that does something meaningful, that it would be you, and that you would be advocating for returning the Board of Apportionment and Taxation to being a board of finance. It is not an excuse, as far as I'm concerned, to say, well, we've taken so many powers away from the Board of A&T that it's practically non-existent at this point. And we don't even want to hear from them. We don't even want them to run the budget hearings. We don't even want them to ask any questions during the budget hearing process. Instead, we're going to eliminate them. Why make that choice?
Because
you had a choice, right? So you could make the choice to eliminate it because it's worthless now, or because we don't want to answer their questions, or because we don't want to have any budget hearings at all. Or you can make the choice to go back to the Board of Finance being a meaningful entity. If you go to any other municipality, and you were talking about comparisons to other municipalities, you go to any other municipality in this state, you will see that regardless of whether they have what they would call a Board of Apportionment and Taxation or a Board of Finance, there is a meaningful public budget hearing process. The way that that happens here in Shelton is through the running of the budget hearing process by the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. It is a check and a balance that you are proposing to eliminate with this proposal.
So that the check is, so you've said a lot of things, right? And you and I are just going to disagree on this, right? So as being on A&T, and I was chairman of it, I do realize how redundant it is having two sets of budget processes, one with the Board of A&T and another one with the Board of Aldermen. It's not necessary given our city today. And many cities operate very well without it. Stratford, Bridgeport, Danbury. I can send you the full analysis to show you. The other opposite way, which we did consider, is to make the fiscal authority of the city the Board of Finance, like they do in Darien and certain other towns. We don't believe that a board that is not fully democratic, that all 8 members or 6 members on the Board of A&T can be elected free by the people of the city of Shelton. That is where the budgetary power should reside. And it's up to the voters, as you said, participation. If they are unhappy with how that is going, they should vote the occupants out and vote new occupants in, because we want the power to be with the voters, not with the Democratic Town Committee and not with the Republican Town Committee.
But you say that, but all what we know, Dan, that what's happening is that the people that don't agree with the mayor are being kicked out of the RTC. So the people that are nominated by the RTC are the people who agree with the mayor. And those people who don't agree with the mayor aren't getting onto the ballot. So the place where we have actual democracy, the place where we have an actual marketplace of ideas with people who don't agree with the current occupant of the mayor's office are on the Board of A&T. And the mayor is asking you to eliminate that board. And you are going along with that.
Let's be very clear, Michelle. No one's asking us to do anything. This board deliberated. And we have a former state commissioner, we have a former high school teacher, we have a former board of ed commissioner, we have a former member of building committees. We actually have a very experienced board who knows a lot about government, and we've had very vigorous debates. I invite you to watch them. They are all online. What this board is not is rubber stamping. And we are doing what we believe is right. And you may disagree with that. And that, of course, is your democratic right. But please be assured that you have some very responsible people here who believe we are doing the right thing on this.
So the mayor came in and asked you to eliminate the Board of A&T, and it's just a coincidence that you decided to adopt that proposal?
I don't know what you're implying. What are you implying?
He spoke publicly and he asked you to adopt his proposal of elimination of the Board of A&T. So it's not legitimate for me to say that he asked you to do that and you're following his instructions?
No, we're following his instructions. I'm a former state senator, Michelle. I follow no one's instructions. So thank you, and I'll turn this over to other folks for questioning.
Yeah, just a point. You know, I appreciate your comment, Michelle.
You have an echo, Don. Don, you have an echo.
How do I deal with that?
Ooh, are you dialed in and on the computer?
Oh, wait a second. Is that better?
Much better. Go ahead.
Okay. Michelle, I appreciate your comments, and I thought a lot about your initial presentation. And you know, without a robust hearing process, I agree with a lot of the things you said. I just don't agree that the AT&T is the answer. I think that so often, you know, layering becomes the solution, and it's not. You know, the primary components of this process is a strong executive, a strong legislative body, and a very robust audit. The electing a mayor every 2 years is a high degree of accountability. I get it. I get your frustration, and I think a lot of people would have that frustration. But layering is not the answer. There's got to be other answers. You know, the idea would be to be more competitive every 2 years because, you know, to coin the phrase, elections have consequences. You can't get around it. But I appreciate your comments. I think they were good.
Thank you. And I respectfully disagree in terms of the characterization of quote unquote layering, because an independent government and a government that has checks and balances requires questions to be asked. It requires independent thought. It requires one to go in and look at the documents and speak to the city government. And that's not happening right now. We don't have an independent audit. We have a financial audit that happens once a year, which is an audit on the papers. I participate in them all the time in my capacity as an attorney representing school districts. They ask us what cases we have pending. We send them a list of the pending cases. They add up the liabilities of the city, and they produce a report saying, here are the liabilities, and here are the expenses, and here are the revenues. That's not an audit. We haven't had an audit in at least 10 years. So we're now eliminating the Board of A&T. That is the only way that the public gets any information out into the public sphere about what's happening with the budget, and we don't have an independent audit. And I know Wayne is going to speak, and so I'll leave it to him to discuss with you from a finance perspective why it is absolutely ludicrous to do away with a Board of Finance in any capacity.
Great. Other questions, Don?
No.
Great. Other commission members? Anybody else have questions for Michelle?
Michelle, this is Gary DeFlippo. You know, I mean, and I appreciate, you know, kind of what you said on a lot of things, but and I know you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. How come the Democrats don't run people for the Board of Aldermen?
The Democrats do run people for the Board of Aldermen.
They haven't ran a full ticket.
Why that's the discussion that we're having.
No, because that's really where the decisions are made. And I know you're a member of the fourth. You're a member of the fourth ward. No one from the fourth ward in 2 elections ran, so there was really no choice there. I mean, you know, maybe the other party, because we have 2 parties, 2-party system, should try running members to the Board of Aldermen.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's where the debate comes. And if you had that, I mean,
that's not a good reason to get rid of other branches of our city government.
But that's where the strength is. The strength's in the Board of Aldermen. Democrats should probably focus on running people, have a dialogue, have a debate, and let the people decide. I go back when years ago in the 80s, and you know, the Democrats controlled the entire Board of Aldermen and the mayor. And that has since changed.
So if that happens, Gary, and the script flips here, and the Democrats are in control of the entire Board of Aldermen, do you mean to tell me that in that instance, you're okay with not having a Board of Finance, that we
Absolutely.
don't need that alternative perspective, a bipartisan board that actually has other ideas that might question the folks in power on the Democratic side.
Yeah, I do. I have no problem with that. And I think because in 2 years, there's another election. And if I had opinions, and I would make them, bring them out and let the public decide. That's democracy.
I respectfully disagree. I think that democracy consists also in the structure of the government. It's not just about electing people to specific offices, because if that were the case, we could say, okay, we only need one person and it's the mayor, and we're going to elect him or her, and then we're going to call that democracy. That's not what we do. We separate we have separation of powers. We have checks and balances. There are other branches of government. You are eliminating an entire branch of the city of Shelton government in this proposal. So you are eliminating checks and balances. You're not producing more choice, you're eliminating choice.
And the whole Board of A&T would have to be restructured totally the other way.
That's fine.
But I couldn't support it. Listen, I couldn't support that unless they were elected, not appointed. You're appointed.
You're saying
you're not elected.
You're making the appointment argument only with respect to the Board of A&T. But what is actually happening with the Board of Aldermen is the same thing, right? The RTC decides who's on the RTC, and then the RTC nominates their candidates, and those are the candidates who get elected.
That's not totally.
If you want to restructure A&T so that the structure of who gets nominated is different, I don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue with is the elimination of that board rather than the strengthening of that board.
The Republican town committee this election had a primary. So the whole Republicans picked it, not the town committee.
Okay.
Right?
That's a fiction, but go ahead.
That wasn't a fiction. They voted. We had an election.
Oh, sorry, I have to mute myself.
We had an election. And that to me, that's democracy.
That's one aspect of democracy. It's not the whole picture.
And no, because we debated this, my feeling was even the Board of Education, if I had a choice to go anyway, I probably would have elected them by ward, and would be no minority representation. It'd be more, and we debated that, and I didn't win my argument. And I think that when you look at what has happened over the last 20 years, we basically ran 10 people on the Board of Education for 9 slots. That's not right.
All right. Any other questions for Michelle? If not, Michelle, thank you so much. We really appreciate your thoughts tonight.
Thank you.
Last up, we have Wayne Bragg. Unless, once again, I'll ask, did Kathy Schultz come? Want to give her a chance? She had signed up. Okay, if not, Wayne, you're up.
Good evening, commissioners. First of all, I've been sitting here for 40 minutes listening to this, and this is not my first rodeo. I've been teaching. I've been a finance executive at Sikorsky Aircraft, at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft. I was controller. I managed a $2 billion budget, and this strikes me as just I don't know if I should even bother giving you my comments. You guys have already made up your mind. It's adversarial. It's contentious. You're not listening. All you want to do is tell us what you've done and why no other way is correct. Why should I even bother speak? Why should I speak? You've just shot everyone down. You're supposed to be listening to the public. We are the citizens of this city. We have ideas. I have 40 years of budgeting experience. I teach budgeting at an MBA program at the University of Connecticut. I've managed budgets. I've designed budgets. I consult in budgeting. I was on A&T for 2 years. It was appalling. But you don't want to listen. So I'm not sure that I even want to say anything. But I just want you to know that the the elimination, the abolishment of A&T is a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea. I don't want to get into discussions about democracy. I don't want to get discussions about politics. I'm looking at this purely from a financial business person lens. In a company, one department prepares the budget. The financial planning and analysis reviews the budget. They go back and discuss that budget with the department. They talk about the assumptions. They talk about the process they went through. They talk about the economic factors that they decided upon. The FP&A department then comes up with their view of the budget, just like A&T. They in turn present that budget to the CFO and to the president and the executive team. The executive team comes back and says, we don't like that because it doesn't meet our revenue projections and our bottom line projections. Go back and refine it a little bit more. The FP&A function goes back to the user department, and they discuss it again. It's a very participative, a very deliberative, very incremental process that has checks and balances. Okay, those are checks and balances. Those are segregation of duties. What you want to do is to centralize into one group, one body, all of that decision-making authority for all the fiscal resources for the city. $128 million worth of business decisions with one body. Let me tell you what that's like. In Accounting 101, my first year as a freshman, they taught me one rule. You have to have segregation of duties. You have to have checks and balances. And this is what the city of Shelton fell trap to several years ago. You can't have the same person writing the checks that reconciles the checking account. Okay, that's just basic accounting. That's the way business works. But what you want to do is you want to give the Board of Aldermen the ability to write the checks, and you want to give them the ability to reconcile the checking account. I could not disagree with that more. As an educator, as a business person, that is just flat out wrong. Okay, you've got to rethink this. I'm pleading with you to rethink this. Okay, we can talk about layering. We can talk about checks and balances. We can talk about redundancy. None of that resonates with me. I'm looking at this purely through the lens of a budgeting process. Okay, even if you would look at the best practices in municipal budgeting, there's a group called the Government Finance Officers Association, and they state the key principle of municipal budgeting is to have mechanisms in place to ensure compliance with the adopted budget, which requires evaluating performance, providing feedback, and making adjustments. Okay? You cannot have all that done by one party. These are independent roles that are financial in nature, not legislative. Those need to be separated. It's so important. You are going to be leading us into all kinds of financial problems if we go down this path of eliminating A&T, because you centralize $148 million of spending under one umbrella. So, I don't want to be trite about this, but this is from a financial perspective, from an accounting background, from a business background, this is incredibly important. So I'm just concerned about, again, this is not me talking for the Democratic Town Committee. This is Wayne Bragg talking as a professor at the University of Connecticut, as former businessman at Sikorsky Aircraft, as a former member of A&T. This is not a good idea. Okay? I find no benefit in doing this.
Great, Wayne, thank you. So I've questioned a lot of people. I just have one question, right? Is do you believe that for the state of Connecticut and the US government that we should take away the power of the legislature to do budgeting and give it to an unelected body that should be the one to budget
Well,
it?
You're playing with words here, Dan. You're talking about A&T being an unelected body, and we're really into semantics here about this, because please don't behave that way. Okay, please don't behave that way. You're being very disrespectful. Listen, this is when I agreed to be appointed, as you say, to A&T. I took that as being elected. I went through and was certified and took the oath with everyone else who was elected for that as given by the mayor. I was very proud of that. So if that's the only thing that's hanging you up, then let's change that. Let's elect people for that. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is one person making all the financial decisions. That's where I have the problem.
I think that's an inaccurate description of what this.
I don't think it is.
Do you think the governor makes all the financial decisions for the state? Does the president make all the financial decisions for the US? No, the check and the balance.
Because you have an Office of Management and Budget. You have you have the GAO. You have lots of independent parties that all look at the budget.
And the check and the balance, the real check and balance, is between the executive and the legislative. And
I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But you have to have independence. It provides unique oversight. Listen, the way the process works today, or should work today, is that the mayor provides the budget to the Board of A&T. They review it, they analyze it, they check the assumptions, they talk to the individual departments about their basic assumptions about why they want to spend X, Y, or Z. And then the A&T goes through a very methodical process. They spend hours. We spend hours on this thing. You know that. And then from there, they make a proposal to the Board of Aldermen. That's a good process. That gives you an independent view of what's going on. Whether they're elected democratically or whether they're not is irrelevant.
See, and this is where we just disagree, Wayne. That's okay. That democratic nature of decision making is the most important thing to me. That is as a commissioner on this.
I understand where you're coming from, and I respect what you're saying. But again, I'm looking at this as a business process. I want to do what's best for the city. I don't want to see the city sign up for some, pablum financial audit that makes everyone feel, oh, what a great idea. When in the 30 years that I've been in the city, no one has ever done an operational audit of the cash management practices. $128 million worth of cash throwing through the city, and no one's ever checked it. Come on. I mean, those are basic principles that we need to enhance our financial control over this, not deteriorate it.
Great. I won't monopolize. Other questions that folks have of Wayne? Okay. If not, then Wayne, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming out here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And with that, I'll just ask one more time if Kathy Schultz is here. Okay, if Kathy Schultz is not here, I think we have gone through everybody. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Seeing none, then again, thank you to everyone who came out tonight to give comments. Thank you for the back and forth. I actually think the back and forth is helpful in actually laying out the different arguments. So I think that actually the nature of democracy, part of it's debate. So I think that was a good thing. So to everyone, thank you. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Gary, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Darlissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And with that, commissioners, just a reminder, we have our next workshop on Monday, both to consider things that we have heard and the feedback from Corporation Counsel. So we'll be meeting on Monday at 7. And with that, thank you all.
Thanks, Sam.